You gotta be Dundee.
Where's the girl?
Coming in on the next train.
Back in 1986, an Aussie bushman in a battered hat walked onto the world stage and changed pop culture overnight. Crocodile Dundee wasn't just a movie, it was a global fever. Paul Hogan became an international icon, the knife became a legend, and suddenly the world wanted to say g'day like they were born in the Outback. But behind the charm, the laughs, and that cheeky grin was a story that was way wilder than anything you saw on screen. From real-life survival tales and bizarre investor deals to dangerous shoots, mechanical crocs, and one line that wasn't even meant to be famous, the making of Crocodile Dundee is pure madness. So grab your boots, sharpen your knife, and hold on tight. This is 20 weird facts you didn't know about Crocodile Dundee, and we're starting with the wildest ones. Fact 20. The real Crocodile Dundee was even wilder. Before Paul Hogan ever swung that famous knife, there was Rod Ansell, a real Aussie bushman whose life story made Dundee look tame. In 1977, Ansell survived 7 weeks alone in the Outback after his boat capsized. He hunted wild buffalo, slept in trees to avoid crocodiles, and drank cattle blood to stay alive. His story made national headlines, and years later, it became the inspiration behind Hogan's character. But unlike the movie's smooth-talking adventurer, Ansell's real life ended tragically. A violent police shootout in 1999 turned the man who inspired a legend into a cautionary tale. And believe it or not, that wasn't even the strangest thing that made this film what it was. Fact 19. INXS and a secret army of investors. This movie wasn't funded by some big Hollywood machine. It was bankrolled by an odd crew of Aussie investors, including one very famous name, Michael Hutchence, the lead singer of INXS. About 1,400 everyday Australians, musicians, business owners, and even small-town locals poured their money into Crocodile Dundee through a unique private investment scheme. It was a massive gamble on a quirky comedy about a bushman in a big city, and it paid off spectacularly. The film made more than $320 million worldwide, turning many of those investors into overnight millionaires. And while the money came from unexpected places, the movie's most famous moment almost didn't make it in. Fact 18. The knife scene was never supposed to be legendary. That's not a knife. It's one of the most iconic movie lines of the 80s. But here's the twist. Nobody thought it was funny at first. Even Paul Hogan admitted it read flat on paper. On set, they improvised with different deliveries, unsure it would land. The crew didn't even laugh during rehearsals. But once Hogan flashed that grin and delivered it with his trademark swagger, the audience went wild. It became the line that defined the movie and pretty much his entire career. But the blade that made movie history wasn't just one knife, it was several. Fact 17. The famous knife was real and fake. The blade in that legendary scene wasn't just one prop, it was a mix of steel, rubber, and aluminum versions swapped out depending on the shot. Paul Hogan insisted on having a real steel knife made to give it weight and authenticity on camera. But for the fight scenes and close-ups, they switched to safer versions, some of which were so flimsy they bent between takes. Ironically, the knife no one thought would matter became one of the most recognizable props of the decade. It was pure movie magic, stitched together with a little danger and a lot of improvisation. Fact 16. It was shot in the middle of nowhere. Parts of Crocodile Dundee were filmed deep inside Kakadu National Park, a place so vast it's bigger than some countries. The crew had to trek through harsh terrain, boiling heat, and endless mosquitoes just to get a few shots. They were so far off the grid that cast and crew slept in huts, shared campfires, and relied on supply runs to survive the shoot. What looks like a smooth, breezy adventure on screen was actually a brutal and sweaty grind behind the scenes. It wasn't just a movie, it was a full-on survival mission. Fact 15. The crocodile wasn't real. Despite looking terrifying on screen, the massive crocodile that lunges at Sue was a mechanical creation. Real crocs were too unpredictable and dangerous, so the crew built an animatronic beast that could thrash and snap on command. The fake croc was so convincing that some extras thought it was real during early test shots. It was operated with a system of cables and hydraulics, creating the illusion of raw power. It became one of the most memorable movie monsters of the 80s without a single real bite. Fact 14. They lived like bush people on set. Because filming took place in the remote wilderness, the cast and crew didn't exactly have fancy trailers or hotel rooms. Many of them slept in simple huts, cooked over campfires, and even dealt with the occasional snake slithering a little too close for comfort. It blurred the line between acting and surviving. By the time the cameras rolled, everyone was so acclimated to the Outback that the film's raw, lived-in feel didn't have to be faked. It wasn't just method acting, it was the real deal. Fact 13. Paul Hogan was a real bridge rigger. Long before becoming an international movie star, Paul Hogan spent his days working high above Sydney as a rigger on the Harbour Bridge. That gritty, working-class background gave his Dundee character the rough charm that audiences instantly connected with. When the movie shows Sydney in all its glory, it's not just set dressing. Hogan was filming in the place where he once earned his living. That personal connection gave Dundee a layer of authenticity money can't buy, and authenticity wasn't the only secret weapon this film had up its sleeve. Something else made it uniquely Australian and surprisingly global. Fact 12. Two versions of the movie exist. When Crocodile Dundee hit theatres, not everyone saw the same film. There were actually two different versions, one for Australia and one for the rest of the world. The original Aussie cut was packed with local slang and humour that international audiences might not understand, so they re-edited and redubbed some lines to make it more accessible overseas. That simple tweak helped the movie explode globally, turning a local comedy into a worldwide box office sensation. And that international success came from a film that nobody expected to blow up in the first place. Fact 11. It was never meant to be a global hit. When Paul Hogan first pitched Crocodile Dundee, he saw it as a small, fun Aussie comedy, something to make locals laugh, not take over the world. No one, not even the investors, imagined it would earn over $320 million worldwide. The film became the second highest grossing movie in the US in 1986, sitting right behind Top Gun. Hogan went from a local TV star to an international icon practically overnight. And the craziest part, it wasn't even funded like a normal Hollywood blockbuster. Fact 10. The movie was funded by regular Aussies. Unlike big studio productions, Crocodile Dundee was financed through a private investment scheme involving around 1,400 everyday Australians. Among them were musicians, small business owners, and even the lead singer of INXS, Michael Hutchence. They poured their cash into a risky little comedy about a bushman in the big city. When the film became a worldwide phenomenon, many of those investors made huge returns, turning a local gamble into one of the most profitable Australian films ever made. And that wasn't the only unconventional move behind this movie's rise to legend. Fact 9. The knife was a last-minute addition. Believe it or not, the iconic Dundee knife wasn't originally in the script the way we know it. Paul Hogan asked the prop designer to make a real steel Bowie knife just weeks before filming, wanting something that would stand out on camera. The team ended up crafting multiple versions, real, rubber, and aluminum, depending on the danger level of the scene. That last-minute decision created one of the most unforgettable movie props of the decade. And the line that made that knife famous, that was almost scrapped too. Fact 8. That's not a knife wasn't supposed to be iconic. On paper, the line sounded flat. Even Paul Hogan admitted it didn't feel like a big deal when they rehearsed it. But when the cameras rolled and Hogan delivered it with that smug, cheeky grin, something just clicked. The crew didn't laugh during practice, but the test audiences erupted. Overnight, "That's not a knife" became one of the most quoted lines of the 1980s. But the magic didn't stop with one line. The crocodile itself became an unexpected legend too. Fact 7. The crocodile became a pop culture star. The mechanical croc built for the movie didn't just stay on set, it became a tourism magnet. Fans were obsessed with the creature, and the hype around it was so intense that Kakadu National Park turned into a global travel hotspot after the film's release. People flocked to see the filming locations, hoping to spot the Dundee croc. What started as a clever practical effect turned into a worldwide obsession. But the real-life creature behind the legend became even more famous than the animatronic. Fact 6. The real croc lived to be nearly 90. The crocodile known as Bert, who inspired and appeared in parts of the film, became a living icon. Tourists visited him for decades at a wildlife park in Australia, where he lived long after the movie wrapped. Bert was estimated to be nearly 90 years old when he died in 2024, making him one of the oldest crocs in captivity. To this day, fans still travel to the park where he lived, treating him like a legend in his own right. But what fans didn't see was how much danger the cast and crew faced just trying to bring this story to life. Fact 5. Filming in the Outback was brutal. The Outback wasn't just a pretty backdrop, it was a battlefield. The cast and crew endured scorching heat, relentless insects and unpredictable wildlife just to get a few key shots. They had no luxury trailers, no fancy catering, and no quick way back to civilization. Every day of filming felt like a survival challenge, which only added to the raw, rugged energy that made the movie feel so authentic. But that ruggedness didn't just live behind the scenes, it ended up baked into the movie's global image. Fact 4. It redefined Australia's image to the world. Before Crocodile Dundee, most people outside Australia had only vague ideas of the country. But this film flipped that on its head. It packaged Aussie humour, wilderness and culture into something the world fell in love with. Suddenly, "G'day mate" and crocodiles became global shorthand for Australia. Tourism boomed, merchandise exploded, and Dundee became an unofficial ambassador for an entire country. But while the world saw a charming bushman, Paul Hogan's own journey to that spotlight was nothing short of unlikely. Fact 3. Paul Hogan wasn't even a trained actor. Before Crocodile Dundee, Paul Hogan wasn't part of Hollywood. He was a bridge worker who cracked jokes on Aussie TV. His natural humour and charisma made him a local favourite, but no one saw him as the guy who'd conquer global box offices. Yet, when he stepped into the role of Mick Dundee, everything clicked. His unpolished charm became the film's secret weapon, something no casting director could have manufactured. And that unpolished charm didn't just win fans, it rewrote history at the box office. Fact 2. It became a box office monster. This little Aussie comedy about a bushman in New York made more money than anyone dreamed. With a budget under $10 million, Crocodile Dundee exploded worldwide, earning over $320 million and becoming the second highest grossing film in the US in 1986, right behind Top Gun. For a non-Hollywood film, that was unheard of. It proved that a scrappy, homegrown story could dominate the global box office and beat the big studios at their own game. And what started as a wild gamble became a cultural icon that would live on for decades. Fact 1. A wild gamble that changed everything. When production began, Crocodile Dundee was just a quirky Aussie film with no guarantee of success. It had no major studio backing, no A-list stars, and a premise that sounded like a long shot. But that gamble turned into lightning in a bottle. The film became a global phenomenon, launching Paul Hogan into superstardom, redefining Australia's image, and inspiring an entire wave of tourism and pop culture references that still echo today. It wasn't just a hit movie, it was a cultural earthquake that nobody saw coming. Crocodile Dundee wasn't just a film, it was a moment. A scrappy little Australian comedy that came out of nowhere, swung its oversized knife and carved its name into pop culture history. From real bushman legends and investor gambles to mechanical crocs and record-breaking box office numbers, this movie was pure chaos and magic stitched together. Almost 40 years later, the legend of Mick Dundee still lingers, not just in quotes and memes, but in how it changed how the world sees Australia. A film nobody expected to explode ended up defining an entire era. If you loved these 20 weird facts you didn't know about Crocodile Dundee and feel we deserve a pat on the back, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Golden Hollywood Archives, where the past always comes back swinging a big knife and a bigger grin.